Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and welcome to this day in sports history. And for a day that typically finds us spending time with family, there are a surprising number of things of note that I could talk about today. But for this first December 25th edition, let's go back to 1862 and a baseball game played on Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. Obviously, this was during the American Civil War, and Hilton Head was under Union control at this point, and was home to thousands of soldiers, military families, and freed slaves. There was a very large federal base located here, and it was a strategic location for the Union Army's three-piece Anaconda plan to restrict supplies coming in and cotton getting out. Christmas Day 1862 was a rare day off for the federal troops on the island, and a full day of festivities was planned with a baseball game capping off a huge feast and celebration. Now, there are differing accounts of the day, but in one, there's an estimation of 40,000 people being in attendance to watch the game, which would have easily made it one of the most attended sporting events in the 19th century. Others believe that number is greatly exaggerated, and the number was more like 10 to 20,000 watching from the dunes around the field. Most reports from that day come from a guy named A.G. Mills, who was known to embellish and make up things without any basis in fact, but it is known that he was one of the players that day and would later become the president of the National Baseball League in the 1870s. The rules of the day differed from place to place and depended on where you were from. New York rules differed from Boston, and the South had its own way of playing as well. For example, one rule played in some areas but was not in effect on this day was called soaking, which was a way to record an out by throwing the ball at the runner and hitting them with it before they reached the base. Even the number of bases used differed from region to region and city to city. On this day, 3 New York regiments made up the two teams. On one, there were members of the 47th and 48th Regiment, and the other team comprised of lads from the 165th New York Volunteer Light Infantry. So it goes to figure that New York or Brooklyn rules were used on this day, which historians say became the most used way to play the game after the war. They played 9 to a side, the ball was pitched underhand, there was fair and foul territory, and the positions on the field were similar to today's version. Some versions played 1 out per side, others played 3, or other versions even more than that. Some games were played until one team scored 100, but on this day, the scoring used and even the final score is lost to history. But many credit the growth of baseball with uniting the country after the war due to the fact that so many soldiers were exposed to it during the war, and the exposure it got on this day in 1862 surely helped. Also on this day in 1971, in the first game the NFL ever played on Christmas Day, Kansas City and Miami played the longest game in NFL history at 82 minutes, 40 seconds. The Dolphins eventually won 27-24. And in 1956, Detroit Red Wings great Gordie scored 3 goals and assisted 3 others in an 8-1 win over the New York Rangers. It was the most points he ever scored in a game in his 26-year career. That's all for today. Enjoy your day with family and friends this holiday season. Thanks for listening today, and I'll have more tomorrow on This Day in Sports History.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. we wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website, seriously, all you got to do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you got to do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.